more on this growing controversy. We're joined from Paris by Christian Millard, our senior diplomatic correspondent in Europe.
Good evening, Calev.
Good evening. And also from Istanbul, we have Yusuf Erim, TRT World's editor-at-large, joining us now. And Yusuf, first of all, certainly it is fair to take issue with President Macron, maybe to criticize his approach, but to use language saying his mental health needs to be checked up, as President Erdogan has said. And doesn't President Macron, after that incident in Paris, that savage beheading, have a right to express himself in this way?
Well, first thing, when we look at President Erdogan's rhetoric, I don't think it's any different from what President Macron said about NATO's health, calling it brain dead, or what President Trump has said about Macron, everything he's touching turning to poop. So it looks like there's a new precedent being set for the way leaders rhetorically address each other. So I don't think Macron should take too much, take it to heart too much. Leaders like to express themselves, and President Erdogan's always been a vocal man, and Macron's been a very vocal president as well. Now, when we look at the brutal beheading of Samuel Paty in Paris, well, obviously it's an act of terrorism, and Turkey has condemned this act. But to have a singular act of terrorism, and then that following period afterwards, where we're seeing this crackdown basically on Islam inside France, the institutionalization of mosques, putting them basically under state control, this type of social rhetoric, this far-right rhetoric we're seeing spurred on by Macron, this is completely uncalled for. And this kind of reminds me of darker periods in European history, and history shouldn't repeat itself.
Well, how about that, Christian? Is it an overreaction on the part of Macron and France, too broad a brush perhaps being used here in the wake of that incident?
Well, when you are insulted some way, when some person says you have to check with your mental health and make a medical treatment, I think between Macron, who is very vocal, as my colleague said, and friend, and Erdogan, who is very vocal too, I think sometimes, the one who deserves a medical treatment probably is more Erdogan than Macron. Erdogan did not show any sign of compassion in the aftermath of the slaughter, of the murder of the French teacher. I want to remind our people, our TV viewers, that Erdogan is a Muslim brother. He is an Islamist. And Macron has understood that finally, and Macron has to go on with the cracking down of several Muslim fundamentalist organizations which are fomenting terrorist violence in our country. We are a secular country. I think the problem with Erdogan, he forgot that Turkey used to be, for a long time until he came to power, a secular state dating back to 1924 with Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. And look at the way it transformed Turkey today, which was a country, a respectable country, until Erdogan arrives to power. So this is it.
Right. I certainly want to give Yusuf a chance to respond to that. Although I'm curious, Yusuf, if perhaps you think some of the other issues that are causing tensions between France and Turkey, the East Mediterranean gas, Libya, the Azerbaijan conflict, might also be playing into this.
Of course, this is just a small snapshot of the bigger picture of problems between Turkey and France. As you mentioned, Syria, French support for the YPG, a huge problem for Turkey. Turkey views the YPG as the Syrian arm of the US and EU designated terror group, the PKK. They've launched a 40-year war on terror against them that's cost 40,000 lives. In Libya, French support for the warlord Khalifa Haftar. That's opposite of what Turkey's supporting in Libya with the UN-recognized government of national accord. Turkey also trying to help Azerbaijan liberate its territory from Armenian occupation, while Macron stands with Armenia. Also in the Eastern Med, Turkey trying to protect its maritime rights, while Macron is supporting and helping Greece and his prime minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, with Greece's maximalist claims. So we're seeing a very clear-cut line between Paris and Ankara as both countries are drifting apart from each other. And when we look at the relationship between France and Turkey. Erdogan's seen, this is the fourth French president Erdogan's seen, and he hasn't had any problems with Chirac or Sarkozy or Hollande. This is the first French president where he's having serious problems. So I think Macron should take a look at the mirror and see where the problem's coming from. And we shouldn't just single out the Turkish president with his reaction. We're seeing reactions from Pakistan, from Morocco, from Kuwait, from Palestine, and from many other Muslim countries. This is a cohesive Muslim reaction right now to Macron. Erdogan just happens to be a little more vocal and a little more in the public eye, so he's on center stage. But this is not just a Turkish reaction. Much of the Muslim world is very, very angered right now with Macron.
Well, Christian, you heard from Yusuf that maybe it's President Macron who needs to take a look in the mirror. And you've heard, of course, a litany of issues that, as Yusuf says, Turkey has with France. Your response?
Well, what I see, Calev, is that Erdogan doesn't tolerate freedom of expression at all. Since he arrived in power, since he came to power, how many people, journalists, judges, lawyers, Kurdish people, have been killed under his order? We are not doing that in France. We are belonging to two different civilizations, I should say. And I think the problem is far from being solved between Macron, who is now wants to take the lead against the attitude adopted by Erdogan, as you said, in the Mediterranean, in Libya, even in Syria. This man wants to spread over. He wants to become the leader of Sunni Islam versus Saudi Arabia, of course, which is going to have a kind of anti-Turkish axis with Israel, United Arab Emirates, and against Turkey in certain way. So what we are going to attend is not of good omen for the coming future.
Right. Yusuf, you basically, Christian, saying Erdogan is not part of the solution. He is part of the problem that France is confronting in terms of radical Islam and his own ambitions. I mean, how do you respond to that?
Well, if part of the problem means countering French interests in areas like North Africa, which used to be France's colonial playground, then yeah, Erdogan is a problem because he provides win-win scenarios for North Africans while France has been a colonial power, basically exploiting the northern half of the continent. Now, if we come to rhetorically what President Erdogan is doing, first thing, he has no problem with the French people. This is solely a problem with Macron and the French leadership right now. When Macron was presented to the world 3 years ago, he was presented as a centrist. And personally, I was very happy when he got elected and when Le Pen lost the elections, because last thing I wanted to see was a far-right French president coming to power. But we can see with Macron's many domestic failures, whether it be his reaction to COVID-19, whether it be the French economy, the Gilets Jaunes protests, whether it be French foreign policy in North Africa with its waning power day by day, we can see that a lot of what's going on, I think, is just basically for domestic consumption to mask his failures as a politician. A lot of Western politicians, unfortunately, when their popularity is waning, they like to bring out a boogeyman. And well, Erdogan's a very popular man right now. So I think he's serving Macron's interests very well as the boogeyman that he's presenting to Paris and the French people, saying, look, I need to protect you from these people. But at the end of the day, we need to realize that France is the #1 exporter of ISIS foreign fighters during the Syrian conflict. So does France have an extremist problem? Yes, it does have an extremist problem. Is the way around that cracking down in Islam? No, that's only fanning the flame.
You began, Yusuf. Let me go to Christian, and Yusuf saying Macron is doing this for domestic political reasons.
No, I don't think so. Macron, after this assassination, which was barbaric, like ISIS did in the past, Macron is under very heavy pressure from his people, from the population, to crack down so many Muslim fundamentalist networks we have. And we have some organizations. We are linked to Erdogan, we are linked to Turkey, and which ask the people to destabilize the French country. So I cannot accept these things, this way of seeing Macron or France, whatever. I think we have a problem with Islamists. I did not say Islam. I say Muslim fundamentalist, Islamist. And it's one of the challenges we have to fight against in a very coming moments. Right now, it's a matter of weeks. And the other thing is Macron will always defend what his predecessors did, secularism. We are a secular country. We want to defend also free expression. And this is what Macron explained through his various speeches.
We'll have to leave it at that. Clearly, a lot of issues between France and Turkey, as were laid out here. Yousef Aram from TRT World, our Christian Millard, thank you for joining us.